YellowTelescope's YellowTelecast, the best practices for the best practices, providing the medical industry's best practices to the medical industry's best practices since 2008. Are you a doctor? Do you work for a doctor? Do you want to earn more, be more efficient, retain your team, hire for success, or just want to have a better lifestyle? I bet you do. What should you expect from the podcast? A lighthearted, casual, fun, hopefully funny, informative, impactful, well-founded look at the medical industry from a pair of passionate, competent, confident, experienced, talented, questionably good-looking, unquestionably good-looking industry leaders, men of the Renaissance, if you will, and even if you won't, who enjoy Scotch whiskey, world travel, music, single malt Scotch whiskey, fine dining, not fine dining, family, art, and Ryan bourbon whiskeys while implementing intensive training and expert staffing, resulting in unparalleled growth. Listen to the podcast, and for more on how Yellow Telescope can help you grow, visit YellowTelescope.com for upcoming events, published articles, recorded speeches, past issues of our complimentary email newsletter, testimonials, and more. Excellent. So wonderful. It's definitely a little more challenging to have the normal back and forth witty repartee, what with not being able to really speak at the same time, which I know all of our listeners and viewers love, is when both of us are talking at exactly the same time. I just wanted to interject quickly about the sort of sales process and what the patient care coordinator can be doing at this time as well, because there is also the notion, oh, we're closed. Oh, we just have to stop doing everything right now because, coronavirus. And I think it will also go back to our point that we're going to pivot into, which is the overall attitude and philosophy that you need to have as a business owner, as a salesperson, in order to be able to weather something like this, and how your approach to your patients really should also carry over to your approach with your staff. And then also some of the things that even as business owners we can be doing during this downtime that relate to our business or even our own financial lives, as we'll talk about given the state that we're in. But for the patient coordinator standpoint, during some of this quote downtime, or maybe they're working remotely, they can be very proactive in following up with people. And it's interesting, and sure, this is an anecdote, but I believe it to be fairly representative of all the practices we work with. I spoke with a coordinator this week in a practice I work with in Chicago, and she was kind enough to say, by the way, I wanted to let you know, as far as the YT process is concerned, what I'm seeing is that all the people that I followed up with, the old leads that I followed up with 6 or 8 or 10 times in a row and never got a response from, so many of them, like a palpable number, are actually crawling out of the woodwork because now they're thinking, well, gosh, I've got the time off. I've got some things to think about. Instead of binging Netflix, they're actually on Real Self, going back to some of these wants and needs. And, as they finish their 3rd pint of Ben & Jerry's, thinking, gosh, I should really probably get myself in shape on the next week of quarantine. So
you had a camera in my house, Ed?
Not only for this exact moment, John. So I think that following the very best practices and really maximizing the conversion of those leads just goes to show you that during these sorts of times, it will create the sort of impression with the patient that you're the practice to call back when they're ready. So that really underscored it. And then also just the number of people, the overall patient sentiment is that they do still want to get this done. And again, I think that sometimes we have to balance a little bit of the message where we're preaching social distancing, which is so important. But then again, one of the safest places anybody can go is to a doctor's office, is to an operating room, where they're not necessarily really even worried about coronavirus, because every day they're in that room, they're worried about HIV and hepatitis and MRSA and all the things that, can be communicative in that type of environment. So it's one of the best places to be. So I don't think it's necessarily irresponsible to think about that way, although certainly it's going to be on a case-by-case basis based on the risk factors, just like we do every single day with patients. But for the salespeople, they really can utilize this time, go through the database, find people that haven't responded previously, be proactively reaching out to them instead of just being the more passive salesperson because the phones aren't ringing as much. But even then, we actually haven't really seen much of a palpable drop in leads in most practices currently, because I think that while a certain percentage of people are going to hold off or maybe pause a little bit just because of the rearranging of their own lives, there's also going to be a similar percentage that are going to come out of the woodwork because, heck, they've got the time off.
Right. And I think two little asides to that. One is I've actually had 2 of my existing clients, which are basically practices where largely the staff sort of seems to make the decisions, maybe more than the doctor, which isn't good or bad. Some are a little bit more doctor is the pit bull owner, and then others are kind of like the staff kind of decides things and the doctor just does surgery and goes home. And I don't know what the right or wrong is, but it just depends on the dynamic. And 2 of those practices, with no ill intention, are just sort of like, John, we need to cancel our next weekly call with Yellow Telescope because, we're closed for the next month. And like you said, it's like, well, If you are, yes. I mean, obviously, if the doctor ultimately makes a decision to say, we are not only not going to do the surgery that needs to be moved, but we're also going to lay off our employees and pay them nothing and just send them home. Okay, although you're going to lose the whole next month and the month after that, and the month after that. So the 1 month of money you're going to save or whatever is going to cost you for 3 to 5 months when you come back. But if that's what you're doing, okay. But my argument is, I think they haven't even really thought it through, where I'm like, well, no, I totally get it. And I'm not minimizing what's going on. You're probably going to work from home. Maybe even you have a little less hours or something. Why wouldn't we be taking new leads? Why wouldn't we be taking phone calls from home? Why wouldn't we be proactively reaching out? In fact, my directive for a YellowTelescope practice is to be following up with 100 to 200 patients a day per patient coordinator, which includes current business, people that need to be moved and rescheduled, but also, what about the last 5,000 leads that came into your practice if you've been open a number of years that didn't buy or never responded? I go back through years of them, because one of the big things we talked about is what to say and how to say it when we reach somebody. But there will be a certain percentage of people who are genuinely interested, but they make the sort of intuitive and reasonably logical thought to think, I saw the news and they're not open. So I'm not going to, I'm free to call them, but I'm not going to because they won't answer, and I'm free to email them, but she's not going to respond. So they just figure they'll try you in a month or two. But when you reach out proactively as a patient coordinator, or your practice does, and you say, actually, good assumption, I would have made the same, but actually, as it turns out, we are just moving cases back, but it's business as usual for the rest of the time. I'd love to get your virtual consultation, you get them set up, but we can't just wait for the phone to ring. We have to go out and get the business as well. And what's interesting, the second thing I was going to mention is an anecdote, which we just had one of our doctors that emailed us who's going through this. And again, I think some areas are a little worse hit, both with the virus as well as fear, as well as rules, and others are less, but they're all going at the same level. Everyone's going to be in the same situation, just basically stay at home at all costs. Unless you absolutely have to, is where it's going to be for a couple, 3, 4 weeks. But this doctor basically said, hey guys, I stopped surgery for the next 1.5 weeks in line with the recommendations of the various national surgical center organizations and the California governor's request. Plus my internist, and California, by the way, is one of those places that's really stringent, even more so than most of the country. So if you're in one of those states where you're like, well, you don't get what's going on here, well, try LA. I mean, LA and New York City are kind of the epicenters for the most big crackdown on what you can and can't do, and people are in hysterics and all that stuff. Although not everyone is, no one's canceling surgery in any of them. But there's a feeling of hysterics, maybe with good reason. But it says, in accordance with the governor's request. Plus, my internist is happy that I'm at home, smiley face. We rescheduled every one of the surgical patients for the first few weeks of April. Go YT, 3 exclamation points. I'm going to continue with pay-per-click marketing since I don't pay if they don't click. I'm also conferencing with SEOversite today regarding live chat. The virtual consultation opportunity is now up on my webpage. All is good. Staff feels well taken care of and happy. We're gonna take the place by storm when I get back. Thanks for your excellent advice during this event. So it's very self-aggrandizing. So of course I love when people say we're good. But this is actually one of Dan Grantham's clients, really. So kudos to him. But this is the point. It's not about not admitting what's going on or minimizing. It's understanding that there's a difference between recognizing what's true, which is there is a pandemic. People need to stay inside. We need to follow the government's rules. We should have very limited contact where unnecessary. And then there's all the hype that surrounds it, which is 24/7, the entire world freaking out. And the answer to that is, let's work from home, guys. Because when this lifts, be it April 7th or May 1st or June 1st or later, you're either going to be full at that time or empty. And if you miss this time, plus you are not proactive and your team isn't working, all of our clients are going to be out there building and building and building and building and building so we can save the year. We're still probably, I know our business is going to be even or up this year, and probably up. And I think most of my practices are going to finish probably up this year. A few won't. But I would say I've got 1 or 2 clients with us nationally who are really, really struggling because of this. 1 or 2 are very, very new practices who are gonna, they've got to navigate it, but at least their monthly costs are lower, so their worst cases are a little lower. They can go take some call or do some other things to mitigate. And then 1 or 2 are larger practices that basically have higher expenses and they're just a little bit more freaked out. Most practices are just fine. They don't prefer it. I don't prefer it. I'm going to lose some money as well, but it's not a life or death situation, and panic isn't the answer. That may lead to us talking a little bit philosophically about layoffs.
Yep.
And just sort of just general approach. So where do we begin with that, Ed?
Well,
We're dealing with this as well. I mean, I was even getting questions from clients. It's interesting as well, just as an aside, that in some ways, I had to cancel a trip out to a client this week. I was supposed to fly out to the West Coast, and just with all of the travel advisories and, restrictions and social distancing and things, we agreed that this wasn't as urgent and that we should actually get out there at some point soon. Doing some calisthenics over there.
I was just giving a future Tom a sip.
Oh, a sip. Excellent. I thought you were doing like the elbow bump that we're supposed to be doing in lieu of a handshake.
That too.
Yeah, there you go. So, and I thought myself, well, look at that. I got two extra days this week that, I have to catch up or get ahead. Frankly, what am I going to do with this extra time? And maybe perhaps not ironically, that has gotten filled up with several additional client calls, which I'm more than happy to do. And I so thank those clients, frankly, for leaning on us, because then there's also been a contingency of clients who have not reached out first, and despite me proactively sending them the messaging that we're putting out and some of the proactive advice that we're talking about how to approach this going forward, thinking very more long term, not having the panic blinders on and looking at potential having to delay revenue, not even necessarily have a loss of revenue, but a delay in revenue towards the end of the year or towards the summer. That all of a sudden, not only are we speaking to a lot of clients, but then also I'm getting text messages, and I just got one, sort of, again, not ironically, while we're on this podcast recording this, from a doctor who said, we just laid off X number of people except for our patient coordinators, for example. And it's just really frustrating because and it's not an ego thing where I have been actually pleading with doctors to please be the level-headed, calm, voice of reason, servant leader that we preach all year long, which is sometimes not even easy to do for them personally in the best of times. But now, particularly in the face of a pandemic where, I think some of the hype, if you will, is very good, because it is hopefully going to flatten the curve, eliminate the curve, whatever they're saying, and prevent the further spread of this. But at the same time, being reasonable and being logical and not being overly emotional about things. But, I spoke to another practice where they had functionally just, basically laid off, put everybody on temporary leave. And I thought to myself, my goodness, as a, co-business owner, as a partner in this firm, I thought, well, we've been preparing for this. So maybe it's a reflection of their lack of preparation financially as far as their business or their personal expenses are concerned. I know you and I have been, fairly conservative in expenditures, as much as we like to talk about expensive whiskey now and then. If we just didn't take on any new revenue or something like that, we're going to be fine. And on top of that, we're going to continue to pay all of our staff for sure. No one is getting laid off. We are positioning ourselves for when this also turns around, but also it's just the loyalty that we owe to our people at this stage, I think, to a certain extent. Now, of course, we have to be mindful of cash flow. And of course, if your P&L is showing only L right now, I understand that, but also pay yourself last, all those sorts of things. I'm sure you'll be able to wax on this a bit from a philosophical standpoint. And sure, it's easier said than done, but speaking as a co-owner in a business, I just have to think to myself, my goodness, the priorities right now are your people, the processes that they're following, and your marketing, because those are the things that are going to carry you through and make sure that you are successful and give your practice longevity, compared to those that act imprudently by cutting those major expenses, which are profit centers, as we always talk about. But now more than ever, they're really the priority. You want to cut some expenses, send us your P&L. We will take a look and tell you what is prudent to be able to reduce expenditure on at this time, so that you can stay afloat if you've got a little bit less cash flow. But also, if you have to dip into your own personal reserve savings, take out a loan in order to pay your staff, I think it's that important, because we also know that, sure, they could be very loyal and patient and, quote, understanding of the situation, but they're also going immediately home and going on Indeed and looking for a job. And because they just don't know if you're going to be bringing them back. And then finally, I'll get off my soapbox here, it erodes trust with your team, because in some ways you're basically saying, guys, I've always been loyal to you. I'm always going to be loyal to you for sure. You can count on me as your leader unless things get tough. And that's not necessarily the sort of environment that these people are going to want to come back to. And even if they do, it's probably because they didn't have any other options.
And I'm going to hit this even harder, and I think that you're spot on. The reality is, what's interesting is I've only heard about, and layoff, it's a weird term. I mean, some people are literally laying off, meaning go home and you can't come back. Others are trying to kind of have a 1 month or a 2 month respite where they're saying, I expect you to be able to come back. I think things will be fine, but we're going to send you home essentially without pay now. Good luck. Feel free to file for unemployment temporarily. In some states, you've got different laws and reasoning, and there's the legal aspect to it in terms of what you can and can't do. But putting all that aside really is about what's righteous. And what's interesting is the couple of practices I've talked to have actually thought about, or have actually gone ahead, of course, always without speaking to us, and laid off staff, even if it's for a month or two. I don't know if there's an exception to it being practices that really don't need to, unless there's something we really don't know. I mean, I'm talking about practices that are doing no less than $3 million a year, and some of them doing between 5 and 10 or more than $10 million in revenue a year. And they have made the choice to have at least temporary, if not permanent layoffs on, and they did surgery up till today, or until Tuesday or Wednesday, after exactly 0 revenue has actually been lost on week 1, day 1 of the virus, before they've taken any pain themselves. They've said, you're so important to me that we're going to send you home without pay, and I'm going to take my Ferrari or my Rolls Royce or my BMW into my beautiful house in the suburbs because, you know, Corona. And it's really, really dumb at a lot of levels. It may actually save certain practices short run because you don't have to pay that salary, but we're talking about mostly people that make a base pay of $2,000 to $5,000 a month. God forbid you are unintelligent enough, if I may say so, to cut off a patient care coordinator, which I don't think any of my clients are unintelligent, but I'm just saying, if you make that choice, and I'm not talking again about a guy who's read a fellowship who's literally going out of business and can't pay his mortgage. We're talking about a business that's doing millions of dollars a year and has some level of success. Again, it's not even about being selfless. I mean, from a completely selfish standpoint, it to me seems prudent to retain your patient care coordinator, practice manager, your core business people that can book those additional cases, and retain your senior level medical team to make sure that you've got people when it's time to come back and do surgery. So if you have no staff to do the surgery, you're going to lose way more money than the salaries just in the first week. You'll lose a year worth of salaries in the first week. And if you don't have any coordinators booking anything, you're going to come back to an empty schedule and you are screwed. You're going to lose possibly millions and certainly hundreds of thousands. So I literally have talked to a couple of doctors. I'm like, you know, you just saved $4,000 in base pay for 1 month. It's a half a case. She's either going to quit and go somewhere else, and then you have to restaff the whole thing from scratch. And that's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars while we ramp that person up. She's not going to be as good as the person you had. B, she is going to come back, but is going to hate your guts forever. They don't forget, you know, people know when they're a very rich boss. Now, you may not even be that rich, but they see their boss on a pedestal. You're wealthier than they are. You make more than they are. Laying you off the first day the coronavirus even hit, before we even know anything, you know, a week into it while you're still just finishing doing surgery, that doesn't ring true. You've lost all trust for the rest of your life with them. So you might as well not bring them back because they don't trust you. You've got very few good options. So I'm not saying that if this goes on for a year, you'll be able to retain everybody. And I'm not saying everyone is fiscally responsible or financially prepared for this. But if you are a $1 million+ practice and you are laying people off, you've got to get in touch with us so we can talk about why on earth that is. And if you're a smaller practice, you probably want to get in touch so we can discuss how you can maybe avoid that and at least retain your key people. People are reasonable and understand things are bad. They understand they may get less commission or bonus. But like Ed said, we've already called every one of our team members and emailed every team and sent them a voice memo saying this. I can't promise as much commission this summer because we're going to make less sales. We're canceling a couple of meetings. We're going to lose some money ourselves. But you're all safe. If this goes on for a year, you're all safe. Now, not everyone can say that. We're really fiscally responsible. We're smart about how we run our business. But we also tell them, in return for this, I want you to remember this when things get better and you do have other opportunities and you think if the grass is greener. They don't, they come here. And that's why we get inquiries constantly from practices throughout the country saying, do you have any openings internally there? Because I know you care more than my practice does about me. And there is a point where it becomes a level of selfishness to do this to other people when you don't need to. But even if you think selfishly, even if you're pure brain of like, let's make money at all costs, life or death, people don't matter, okay. because we are in business to some extent to earn a profit. I don't think it's profitable to go down this path. And I really wanted to hit this hard because I'm just dumbfounded by the idea, which leads me, if I may say, on my little soapbox over here, to talk briefly about one other topic, which is putting that out into the world communication about being closed. We cannot, you should not, and yet many practices are, and I'm just like, my head is just in my palm, just like smacking myself. Every practice I see keeps putting out on social media that they're closed, email blasts out that they're closed, and keeps putting out talks about how worried they are and how fearful they're about COVID. Everyone should stay inside because they're closed. Now, again, it goes without saying, if anyone is unaware of COVID, then they're under a rock. And the last thing anybody really wants to hear from you guys as plastic surgeons or derms or whatever is about COVID. Again, they have CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and Bloomberg and every news channel on earth and everything on their iPhone, and every single place they go, everyone's got an opinion. First of all, as an aside on social media, why don't you keep posting things that are entertaining? I've had people say, well, we don't want to be tone deaf and we want to be respectful of the situation. Totally agree. I think that you should make one post, usually with the doctor speaking, or just kind of a post, visually with words. It basically says, first of all, our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to everyone dealing with this. Thank you to all of the people that are working hard, from our nurses to police officers to everybody else who's out there in the public eye, to people working at Walmart and keeping the grocery stores open. Everyone who's doing anything, the Amazon employees, thank you guys so much. We are hunkering down here. We are moving our cases back. Our sense is that you, as our loyal followers, want to hear a couple of things. One are things we can do to help the world, charitable donations, things to be better people, some recommendations. We're going to pepper those in, but also we think you need a respite. You're homeschooling your kids. There's very little to do. There's so much negative news out there and we're not covering it up, but we're hoping you're coming to us for a little fun and education, to learn about that procedure you're interested in, to see amazing results, to see lives change. So we are going to continue to put out amazing content. It might be us playing with the dog at home, or it may be an amazing rhinoplasty reveal or a breast dog result, because we think you probably want that. Some people want to buy t-shirts, some people want to read about sports, some people don't want everything to be about it. It doesn't mean that you're tone deaf to put it. So by covering that, in other words, creating a goes without saying statement in your first post, you then can pepper in just your regular social media post. But anyway, back to the concept that we're just talking about, which was something.
Whether or not you're actually putting the message out that we're open or closed.
Closing. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ed. My one half of a whiskey is kicking in. The idea behind this is to not put out in the ether that you're closed, because remember, when you say you're closed, people immediately assume they can't contact you. Even if you then at the bottom of the post say, but we're available for virtual. Whenever you put it out an email blast, emails are only opened by about 15 or 20% of people, so 80% don't get it. When you put a post out on your Instagram or social media, 5 to maybe 20% of people see it, so 80 to 95% of people never see that post anyway. And more importantly, 90 to 99% of your patient database, your clientele, your social media followers are not having surgery in the next 30 days with you. They're not the 5 or 50 or 2 or 20 cases you have booked, or the 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 filler patients you have. They're everyone else. So for the people that are scheduled, if you are needing to quote unquote close for a month or a few weeks or whatever it is, call them. Shoot them a text, shoot them an email, give them a call and say, hey, Barbara, like we already taught you, we need to move your appointment back. For everyone else, we're not closed. We're just working from home. And so what the messages should be is, we are business as usual. We are open for business. It's just that we may not be scheduling your surgery for a few weeks, but we're offering virtual consultations. We are offering phone conversations. We're proactively reaching out. Our front desk is answering phones which have been forwarded. Our patient coordinators are on hold. Our doctor is available to answer your questions. It really needs to change the tone. And again, we're busy, we're full. We've already rescheduled that first month back. So you're really doubling up a month. We're pushing 11 months worth of work or 12 months of work into 11 months, or maybe 12 months of work into 10 months. It's going to get busier. This too shall pass. So let's stop putting in the ether these really weird letters and these really weird social posts. The world's ending. we're closing. Everyone already knows that you're good people. Everyone is already aware that you're closing because the ASPS or ASAPs or the government or whoever mandated it or recommended it, or you're good citizens. We all know you're practicing good hygiene. We already know you're washing your hands. We already know why you're doing it. All we really want to know is, well, I'm following you because I'm interested in plastic surgery or derm or whatever. What should I do now? The answer is give us a buzz. We're open for business. We'll get your virtual consult done. We'll get you in for your procedure, surgery, treatment, or whatever. As soon as we're back, what's the big deal? Let's move on. YellowTelescope's the same way. I'm not expecting to land like 100 new deals this week. I think people are a little worried, but the same people who are interested are still interested. We're still already booked out till December. We are fully booked. If you don't get in touch with us over the next couple of months, with or without ASAPs, with or without Vegas Cosmetic Surgery Conference, we're going to be booking Q1 of 2021. That's just the reality. So I don't expect necessarily anyone to want to be billed now, and luckily our contracts start 6 months or 8 months later, but if you're interested, it may make sense to have a conversation with us. So that's true. It's honest, it's urgent, but it's true. And what else do these doctors have to do besides chat with me and vice versa? So give us a holler. It's the same thing you should be saying to your patients. That felt really good to get out.
Well done. Now, I've been feeling the same exact way. I mean, I think that so much of this is the attitude that we need to be able to have with our patients and with our staff. I think that it's so easy to be affected by some sort of sense of panic, but that emotion is counterproductive. And as easy as it is to say, just calm down and be calm, even when we think we are being that way, sometimes our actions are not actually reflective of that sentiment. I mean, it's sort of like saying, look, I'm very calm, everything's gonna be fine, everyone go home, I'm not paying you anymore. And you're like, wait a minute, which one is it? Right? And so
but come back in 30 days and be loyal to me and don't look for another job ever, and don't expect a pay raise or anything.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we should probably finish on the topic of what we can be doing right now, what our attitude should be towards the long-range plan of our financial lives as it relates to our business and otherwise. We've been using the analogy of looking at your business like the stock market, right? Anybody who is invested in the stock market probably feels a little pain right now. Some people are feeling a lot of pain.
Everyone loves losing 30% of their 401k in 2 weeks. It's wonderful. Now, I'm sure it'll never come back. We should all give up. Just jump off the bridge.
Sell. No, if you're looking at it, the way that you should be, hopefully prudently, and if you've prepared and at least have a little bit of cash that you actually are comfortable reinvesting right now, what an unbelievable long-term opportunity to actually be buying into the market right now. Every time the market has dropped, I'm injecting a little bit more. And similarly with your practice, if you're looking ahead at your caseload and you're in one of those practices where you've had to defer all those cases, say a few weeks or even months, you should be thinking, oh my gosh, what an unbelievable opportunity for me to invest in my team, to invest in myself. And it doesn't have to be money, but please don't stop paying them, but also give them some proactive things to do for the business from home. Give yourself some proactive things to do for yourself, for your own personal growth, and financially as you kind of reinvest in what could be perceived to be a relatively soft period right now. But I know you also wanted to speak a little bit as well about some of the other things that people can be doing, whether it's even considering real estate as an option and where things may be. I mean, we're not economists, but we do deal with trends certainly, and at this point I have 12 years to sort of compare to, at least in this particular industry. But I know you actually had a couple of things that you were thinking about as well.
Yeah, well, I think that a couple of just general philosophical things. One of my favorite quotes of my own, which I think I have two, so the rest of them I steal from smart authors and whatever, but I think one is flowing like a twig on the shoulders of a mighty stream, which I actually stole entirely from planes, trains, and automobiles. So not my quote. So I have to think if I have anything of my own. Pretty much everything's stolen, but one of them I think that I maybe came up with or can't remember, listen to someone else say, is it really isn't the economy, it's your economy. It's not the economy, it's your economy. And I've lived this. So for those of you guys out there who say, well, he's not in my situation, he doesn't get it, good for him running a good business and he can weather the storm, but I can't. I get that, and I think some of you guys won't be able to. There will be a few people who shut down. There are going to be some challenges and problems, but you're going to be okay long run. But I have been around the block, and you know, I was a hard-charging young guy, and I was making a lot of money, at least for my age, in that 20 to 25 range. I bought my first condo. I think I paid $210,000 for it, which was a lot of money for me at that time. It was worth $450,000 within 2 years. I made a good purchase. And then a hurricane blew it down, and not only did I not get the 450, I didn't get the 210 back. I had to sue the insurance company because I didn't feel like paying, because I figured a lot of people wouldn't sue and wouldn't push to get that money back that they were owed. And it took me 2 years to get my initial principal back. So I had to keep paying my mortgage during that time, and I had to pay rent. I almost went bankrupt. I lost every single dollar I made up to the age of 27, and I was absolutely dead broke at 27 due to a hurricane, and nothing I ever did wrong other than save, invest in real estate, and I had $100,000 on the sidelines in case of a rainy day. Just still didn't matter. And so at that time, it was actually a booming economy, Ed.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter what the economy was, because my economy was in the dumpster. My economy was bad, so it really didn't matter what the economy was. I'm glad everybody else was doing well. I was doing poor. And I also remember that after the 2008 crash, I luckily didn't own real estate at that point, because I already had mine blow down in a hurricane. I only could afford to rent. That allowed me to make an investment, my second home ever, which then doubled in value, and I flipped for 3 years later and made $300,000 or $400,000 on, or something like that. And when the economy, quote unquote, in 2008 was bad, my economy was great. I was making more money than I ever made before again. I had saved more than I ever saved up to that point, and I bought a house on the cheap that I was able to flip a couple years later for more. So it's not the economy, it's really your economy. And one of the things I would like to argue is, one of the things we talk about is, there's a lot of goes without saying stuff, but there is also hysteria. Some of what we're hearing isn't true. And if you're a doctor doing a couple $1 million a year, $1.5 million, $3 million, $5 million, $7 million, $10 million, and you have to move a month of cases, you have to move 2 months of cases, you have to move 6 months of cases, it's going to be painful, but I got news for you. You're fine. You're going to be okay. You can handle that. They're not all canceling, they're moving. You will lose some of it, but you're not going to lose all of it or even a majority of it. And you're going to have a temporary cash flow issue. So it is okay to actually say, you know what, we're okay. And this is also leading to a word to the wise. I strongly recommend that each of you guys out there in podcast land, and this is really true year round, even when the economy is good, you need to be good to your vendors. We're paying everyone we owe, and we're paying them all on time. If we go out of business, things would change. You know, at some point we have to go and beg and plead and figure things out. But I want to remind you, in terms of the order you should be paying bills, the number one thing you should be doing is retaining and paying your people. Number two, after that, you should be making sure you're paying your web team that does your organic SEO to make sure that you can keep your marketing going. So without that, you don't have any future. Who cares if you save a month of payments, which is like $1,500, $3,000, $10,000, something like that. You lose one case, you're dead. So you've got to pay your web vendor. And honestly, your yellow telescopes, the small businesses that serve you, where you have a personal relationship and you care about them and they care about you, and they've invested time and energy, and they have mouths to feed. They have 10 or 20 employees, and when you don't pay, they don't pay their people suffer, because this is a career. You know, this is a family that we've built with our clients. And remember, your web team is building a family, and they have real human beings. Your other small businesses that serve you really care about you. And when you default on week one, when you ask for a discount or to pause payments and you haven't even felt any pain, I get where it's coming from. We've had 2 or 3, and that's okay. We're not mad at those people. We might ask the same thing under different circumstances. We have others that haven't asked, just great. But I'm not just talking about us and YellowTelescope or SEOversite, but you know, other businesses that serve you, your web teams, your accountants, your attorneys, your other people. When you go to them 4 days into this and say, I need to pause my payments, or I can't pay you, or that things are dire, what you're saying is, I need all of you to be my bank. And if you really need us to ever be your bank, we actually probably will try to be it. Meaning we have 1 or 2 clients that we're trying to figure something out for, because they are at that tenured practice doing a lot of millions, and they aren't fiscally capable of paying very long. And so we want to be available for them. But in order for us to be available for them, we need our more powerful vendors to be there for us. And similarly, for you to be successful, you need us there for you, even during a time of need. So when you're a decently successful practice and you play your web marketing team, whoever they are, not us, and you give them their $2,000 or $3,000, which isn't going to make or break you. It has nothing to do with your success this year, even if this went 6 months. What you're doing is helping them help someone who really needs it. So we're all doing all of this to help the world, right? You're not doing this to avoid getting coronavirus. That would be a great side effect, so to speak, to not get coronavirus. You're doing this so that not as many people get it as quickly, so the elderly and the people that could be really sick have beds and ventilators. So you're doing that to help the world, right? Well, the other way that you can help the world is by maximizing your revenue so that you have tax dollars, the economy doesn't crash as hard, because when the economy crashes, lots of people in third world countries die. When America drops by 30%, other countries drop by 60 or 80%. When people become malnourished in America or even homeless in America, people are dying in other countries. So we could talk about how just mitigating the coronavirus is the only solution, but if we take that too extremely, we're going to kill a lot of people. And also, if we do silly things and go party on the beach with 15,000 of our friends, well, we're going to kill a lot of Americans. So the answer has to be somewhere in the middle, and no one has all the answers on the perfectly right spot, how many standard deviations from the mean one way or the other we are. But what I know is this: if we can keep you open, that's something we can do for our clients. That's going to help you make money, keep your employees employed, keep them stable and happy, which means their kids and mortgages and so on are fed and paid. And we're going to put more tax revenue in so we can help the world and the less fortunate. And that's valiant, just as staying in is, and not being a dummy and going out and spreading the diseases. And both can be done simultaneously. And what you guys can do as business owners, in my view, is mitigate, move cases, show calm and resolve and confidence, educate and teach. Protect your people and teach your people and look out for them before just yourself, at least for a couple, 3 months, which you can withstand. Pay your bills to all of your vendors to show you care about them in a time of need, just like you expect them to care about you. And protect those businesses that may not be able to be as fortunate as you and may really need that pass, may really need that insurance, because we are trying to help out some other clients and businesses. So we're going to do our part. We're donating to charity. We're going to be giving a couple people a pause for a month here, a month there. We're not giving anyone a pause for 6 months or forever. It doesn't work that way. It is still business, and we plan for this. So you have to plan for this. But do what you can to help your fellow man. Maybe that's YellowTelescope. Maybe that's your web vendor. Maybe that's your accountant. Maybe that's just your team member who maybe makes a $3,000 base pay, and you float her for a month because she's loyal and she's earned it, and you're going to lose $3,000 on that deal, but maybe, just maybe, it'll pay you back in spades later. But it's not really the economy, it's your economy, and I challenge you to really look at if your economy is that bad yet, and if it's really likely to get that bad. Moving a couple $100,000 in cases, it hurts, you'll live. And in fact, if you have to move $500,000 or $1 million in cases, that means you're that successful. It's actually the ones that only need to move 2 or 3 cases that tend to be struggling the most, because they really need that. That could be their whole month. And with you guys, losing 5% or 10% is going to be okay. So I wanted to give that as sort of a intensive parting shot, because we are all in this together. At least we hear that we are. And the people that are in our ecosystem here in our industry, the people we're all going to work with and be at booths with for the next 30 years together, when we're speaking at ASAPS in a few months, and ASAPS this fall, and AFPRS, and AACD, and VCS, and MCS, we're all in this together. And so we haven't canceled a booth. We're going to all the meetings where we make profit or not. We haven't laid anyone off because we don't need to, because we plan for it. We're not going to anyway. I can't look my people in the eye and say, look at my beautiful house. By the way, I have to lay you off because we're having a bad month. By the way, I'll be in my fancy car. I can't do it. And I also am not imprudent, because I think it's going to pay me back tenfold. Because when we do come back and are strong, my team's going to say, I'd be a damn fool to be anywhere else. And everyone on your teams, if you don't do it, are going to be seeing if they can get a job with us. And we don't want to hire them. We want them to work with you permanently, because you can create an amazing and lasting environment and snap your fingers and do something special. Ed?
Nothing to add. 0. I'm done. Fantastic. No, of course, thought about all the things.
Conversation, Ed.
You've been thinking about all the things that I've been thinking about, all the things that I've been preaching, as preachy as it may sound, because and I almost have to give the disclaimer to any of the clients that I speak to, that I'm not being Pollyanna, I'm not being naive, I'm not being overly optimistic and just willing it to happen, but I choose to believe what we've seen from history, that we're going to be fine. And we're all going to be fine. And I choose to be.
And grew through it. Yeah.
Right.
We opened the situation. We did it. Yeah.
Yeah. I choose to be the person, the individual, the company that is going to come out of this stronger whenever that is, whether it's weeks, whether it's months, whether it's years for some sort of full recovery for this economically, whatever for businesses. But there are going to be a certain amount that go out of business. There are going to be a certain amount that sort of succumb to the panic and the doomsday scenario, and I choose not to be one of them. And I am thrilled for those.
I hate to say it, but we hope all of our clients make, and all of you out there do too, but if someone's not prepared and they don't handle things right, it's just market share to take. Hey, and by the way, Ed was talking about investing. And yeah, not everyone has cash on the sidelines to do so, but if you're fortunate to have money and you're able to get some of it out, we've been sitting on the sidelines personally for almost 2 years, both Ed and I, knowing that something was coming. So we missed the top of the mountain a little bit, but it's hard to time it. We would have lost all of it for 3 or 4 years with investing in under 3 weeks. But yeah, I think you should be dollar cost averaging in. But if you have money to do that, you should be paying your bills. You should not be laying off. You should be looking at other things, because a really good return on investment on that stock market might be 10% per year over time, or 7. And your return on investment on a patient coordinator is probably 5-fold, 10-fold, 20-fold, 50-fold. That's up to 5,000%. If you could do a stock like that, you'd be prudent. Same thing with real estate. There's going to be some great values out there. You should be socking away cash and getting ready to purchase. But it's going to be probably 2 or 3 years before rock bottom if that one occurs, because interest rates are still low. So yeah, I bought Starbucks 27% ago. In the middle of this, threw in, I don't know, 25 grand or something into Starbucks, because I just don't believe people will stop drinking coffee. It's a drug, and people love their Starbucks, and it's up, I think, 26%. It's down a little bit today. So there are opportunities out there always, and it's not a, hey, let's worry about corporate rating and make money situation, but it is a reminder that even when it's dark, there's lightness, and it's those who are rational when the stock market are down that come out like Warren Buffett long run, buy low and sell high. And that's really a rationale for how we're running our businesses and our practices right now, which things seem dark and the worst, and we're like, well, got to sell, just got to give up, just got to go home. But the best, which I'd like to think we're in it and we're guiding our clients to it, are like, we're going harder, stronger. We're not being patient, persevering. Patience is waiting for something to pass. Persevering is continuing to do the hard work throughout that process to make sure you're prepared once it does pass. So invest.
Yes, be prudent, try to be positive, and if you need a pep talk, give us a call. We're ready to talk through things logically and to help everybody map out an actual sound strategy going forward. We're not perfect, we're not magic, but I really believe in this industry and our clients, and I know that nobody's going anywhere. The patient demand is still going to be there. And if you can have a year that's a little bit down but still not lose money, that's a huge win. We still like to talk about one of our first clients in 2010 didn't lose money, which means they were way up compared to anybody else. And so you need to be thinking that way and thinking long term about what you want to do for the rest of your career and building your team around you.
Absolutely. And again, there's actionable things. A lot of this end stuff is philosophy, but a little parting shot for those guys that actually waited to the end of the podcast. One of the things you should be doing is having some sort of OG special, as I'm calling it. There's probably a better title for that, but for your original gangsters, for your die-hard clan, for all of your non-invasives, one of the things we do recommend, even if you're not a discount practice, is I'd be offering a significant deep discount on really common things like a Botox or a filler that are exclusively for those people who come in during the first 1 or 2 weeks, maybe a 14-day window, from the day you're cleared to reopen, to kickstart things and to remind people that they're in, to get the videos out that they're there and things are back and are normal on social media. And so you're going to give a little something to kickstart that, because people do want their services. They do want to get back in, and you can actually offer specials and so on. And again, be proactive, reach out to all of them now, load up 100 people for that first week back. And if you need to move them a week, you move them a week. If you have to move them a month, you move them a month. But because they're getting a discount, in return for coming in that 1 or 2 weeks, they have to come in the first 1 or 2 weeks you're back to get that revenue cycle running and just the feeling of the business running again very, very quickly. So there's actionable things we can do, there's philosophical things we can do, and there's things we can do to build our people and build ourselves. I know I'm reading Ed's Outward Mindset right now. I got through 6 chapters yesterday because I had a little free time in between things. So I'm working on me as much as I'm working on all my clients' businesses, and things are going to be a-okay. Just ask future Tom. He survived.
That's right. You guy's a survivor. Well, thanks to everybody for joining.
Why don't you wrap us up, Ed, now that I finally talked over you?
That's all good. No, thanks to everybody for joining us. We're actually going to be getting this out in relative real time due to the time-sensitive nature of all this content and how anxious we've been to get some of this messaging out to everybody. We may even have episode 24 out before episode 23 was supposed to even be aired, getting things out ahead of schedule. So thanks to all of our clients as well as our team for getting this together so quickly. And thanks to all of the listeners. Thanks for joining us with this kind of unique format that we may play with a little bit more in the future, although I do miss being in the same room as John Hoffenberg.
Ed, you're a very significant reason that we were just voted one of 2020's best places to work in South Florida. Thanks for all of your service and help, and thanks to the whole team for getting this all together. I miss all of you, even though I'm just a podcast or FaceTime or phone call away. We'll talk to all of you guys real soon. Appreciate everything.
Cheers, everybody.